From the moment we are born, we are conditioned to seek validation. As children, we look to our parents for approval. In school, we measure our worth by grades, by friendships, by how well we fit in. And as we grow, society reinforces this idea that our value is somehow tied to how others see us. But the truth is, the moment you tie your worth to the opinions, attention, or presence of another person, you have already handed over your power. Too many people walk through life waiting for someone else to tell them they are enough. They wait for a partner to choose them, for a friend to affirm them, for the world to see them. They bend, they shrink, they compromise, not because they want to, but because deep down they believe that their value is determined by how someone else treats them. They mistake attention for validation, as if the mere fact that someone is looking their way means they are worthy. But attention is not love, and presence is not proof of your value. No contact is not just about removing someone from your life. It is about removing the need for their validation. It is about understanding on the deepest level that you are enough exactly as you are. When you internalize that truth, you stop chasing. You stop justifying. You stop explaining yourself to people who don't deserve an explanation. You stop seeking closure from those who never valued you to begin with. You stop measuring your worth by whether or not they reach out, whether or not they regret losing you, whether or not they miss you. Because none of that changes the fundamental truth. You were worthy before they arrived, and you are worthy after they leave. There is a reason so many people struggle with self-worth. It is because they have been trained to seek it outside of themselves. From childhood, they were rewarded for pleasing others, for making others comfortable, for prioritizing the needs of others before their own. They learned that love was something to be earned, something that required them to be good enough, beautiful enough, or worthy enough in the eyes of someone else. And as they grew, they carried that belief into their relationships, subconsciously seeking people who would confirm what they had been taught to believe, that love and worth must be proven, that validation is a currency they must keep earning. But here's the truth. Self-worth is not something you earn. It is something you claim. It is something that has been inside of you all along. The problem is, many people don't realize this until they are forced to stand alone. And that is why no contact is so powerful. It forces you to face yourself. It forces you to look in the mirror without anyone else's voice in your ear telling you who you should be. It strips away the distractions, the illusions, the excuses. It leaves you with one undeniable truth. You are all you have, and that is enough. The people who struggle the most with no contact are the ones who have built their identity around someone else. They don't just miss the person, they miss the version of themselves they were with them. They fear the silence because in the absence of external validation, they don't know how to validate themselves. But this is where the real work begins. This is where you learn that your worth has never been in someone else's hands. This is where you build the kind of self-respect that cannot be shaken. When you finally understand your worth, everything changes. You no longer entertain relationships that drain you. You no longer tolerate disrespect, breadcrumbs, or half-hearted love. You no longer allow anyone to make you feel small just so they can feel big. You walk differently. You speak differently. You move through life with a certainty that cannot be faked, and that certainty is what sets you free. Self-worth is not about arrogance or ego. It is not about thinking you are better than anyone else. It is about knowing that you do not need anyone to complete you because you were never incomplete. It is about recognizing that your presence in someone's life is a privilege, not a necessity for your survival. It is about choosing yourself over and over again, no matter who does or does not choose you. Most people will never understand this level of self-worth because it requires an unshakable commitment to yourself. It requires walking away even when it hurts. It requires breaking patterns, unlearning conditioning, and standing alone when everyone else is settling. It requires the courage to say, I am enough, even if no one else ever tells me so. No contact is the ultimate test of self-worth because it demands that you stop looking outward for validation and start looking inward for truth. And the truth is this: your worth is not defined by who stays, who leaves, or who returns. It is not defined by whether or not someone recognizes your value. It is not defined by a relationship, a title, or a status. Your worth is, and always has been, yours alone. Emotional attachment is one of the strongest forces in human psychology. It keeps people connected long after a relationship has stopped serving them. It keeps them tethered to a past that no longer exists, replaying memories that feel real even when reality has shown them otherwise. It convinces them that they need someone who has already proven they don't deserve a place in their life. The hardest part of no contact is not the silence. It's breaking free from the emotional chains that kept you tied to a situation that hurt you. Many people don't realize how deep those chains run. It's not just about missing someone's presence. It's about the comfort, the familiarity, the sense of identity that was built around that relationship. The brain craves routine, and when a person becomes part of your daily life, their absence feels like withdrawal. That's because on a neurological level, emotional attachment is similar to addiction. The same dopamine pathways that light up in response to love and affection also activate during addiction. When that source of emotional stimulation is suddenly removed, the brain goes into panic mode, craving the very thing that caused the pain in the first place. This is why so many people struggle to stay away from toxic relationships. It's not that they don't know better. It's not that they don't see the red flags. It's that their emotions are wired to seek comfort over logic, familiarity over growth. They mistake the intensity of attachment for love, when in reality it's just a biochemical cycle that needs to be broken. Breaking free from emotional chains is not about suppressing feelings. It's about understanding them. It's about realizing that the pain of letting go is temporary, but the pain of holding on to something unhealthy is permanent. It's about recognizing that attachment is not love, attachment is habit, and habits can be changed. One of the biggest obstacles to no contact is the fear of loss. People convince themselves that if they let go, they will lose something valuable. But what they fail to see is that the real loss happened long before they walked away. It happened in every moment they felt unappreciated. It happened in every time they were made to question their worth. It happened in every situation where they gave more than they received. The loss was never in the ending. It was in the moments they stayed when they should have left. Another powerful emotional chain is hope. Hope keeps people in situations that should have been abandoned long ago. It makes them believe that if they just try harder, if they just give a little more, if they just wait a little longer, things will change. But hope, when misplaced, is just another form of self-betrayal. It convinces people to invest in potential rather than reality. It blinds them to the truth that if someone truly valued them, they wouldn't have to beg for love, attention, or respect. Breaking free means facing that truth no matter how uncomfortable it is. It means accepting that closure is not something another person can give you, it's something you give yourself. It means realizing that waiting for an apology, an explanation, or a moment of recognition from the other person is just another way of keeping yourself chained to the past. Many people struggle with the silence that comes with no contact. They mistake silence for emptiness, as if the absence of someone else means they are incomplete. But silence is not empty, it is full of possibility. It is the space where healing begins. It is where you learn to sit with your emotions instead of running from them. It is where you rebuild yourself from the inside out without the influence of someone who made you feel small. The real battle is not against the other person, it's against your own mind. It's against the version of yourself that still believes you need them. It's against the emotional patterns that make you crave validation from someone who never truly valued you. It's against the idea that you are losing something when in reality you are gaining yourself. Every time you resist the urge to break no contact, you weaken the chains that held you back. Every time you choose self-respect over emotional impulse, you take another step toward freedom. Every time you remind yourself of why you walked away, you reinforce the truth that your peace is more valuable than any relationship that required you to sacrifice yourself. The hardest part of breaking free is that it doesn't happen overnight. There will be moments of doubt, moments of longing, moments where the past feels closer than the future. But every moment you choose yourself over the illusion of what could have been, you take back a piece of your power. You redefine what love means, not as something that requires suffering, but as something that begins with you. Discipline is what separates those who reclaim their power from those who remain trapped in cycles of emotional dependency. No contact is not just about avoiding someone, it is about mastering yourself. It is about choosing long-term strength over short-term relief. It is about understanding that every time you act on impulse, you are giving away control not just to the other person, but to the version of yourself that still believes you need them. The mind is wired for instant gratification. When you feel pain, your first instinct is to soothe it. When you feel loneliness, your first instinct is to reach out. This is how habits are formed, by repeating behaviors that bring immediate comfort, even if they cause long-term harm. Emotional attachment creates patterns in the brain, and breaking those patterns requires something far stronger than emotion. It requires discipline. Discipline is the ability to sit with discomfort without reacting to it. It is the ability to recognize a craving for what it is, a temporary urge, not a command you have to obey. It is the ability to override old programming and create a new standard for yourself. Without discipline, no contact becomes a cycle of blocking and unblocking, leaving and returning, resisting and giving in. With discipline, no contact becomes a permanent shift in mindset, not just an action you take, but a new way of being. Impulse is the voice in your head that tells you to check their social media, just once, just to see if they miss you. Impulse is the thought that says, maybe I'll just send a quick message, nothing serious. Impulse is the false logic that convinces you that if you don't reach out, they'll forget you. That if you don't respond, you'll miss your chance at closure. That if you don't give them one last opportunity, you'll regret it. But impulse is not logic. Impulse is emotion trying to disguise itself as reason. People who fail at no contact fail not because they don't want to move on, but because they don't know how to override impulse. They mistake temporary relief for real healing. They think that sending one message will make them feel better when in reality, it will only restart the cycle of pain. It is the same way an addict convinces themselves that one last hit, one last drink, one last time won't hurt them, but it does, it always does, because every time you break no contact, you reinforce the belief that you are not in control. Discipline is a muscle, and like any muscle, it must be trained. In the beginning, resisting the urge to reach out will feel unnatural. Your brain will try to justify why breaking no contact is the right decision. It will create scenarios where you convince yourself that this time will be different. It will trick you into believing that reaching out is strength, when in reality, strength is in restraint. The strongest people are not those who act on every emotion. They are those who can control their emotions without letting them control them. One of the most effective ways to develop discipline is to shift your focus from what you are losing to what you are gaining. When you think about breaking no contact, ask yourself, what do I actually hope to accomplish? Do I truly believe this person will change, or am I just seeking temporary comfort? Do I really want to reopen this chapter, or am I just afraid of moving forward? When you ask yourself these questions with honesty, the answer becomes clear. You're not reaching out because it will help you. You are reaching out because you are uncomfortable sitting with the pain of healing. But healing is supposed to be uncomfortable. Growth is supposed to be challenging. And nothing worth having comes without discipline. Another way to strengthen discipline is to create barriers that make breaking no contact more difficult. This means deleting numbers, blocking social media, removing reminders of the past that trigger emotional responses. It means setting clear boundaries with yourself and sticking to them, no matter how tempting it is to break them. It means treating no contact as a commitment, not just a temporary decision. The more barriers you create, the easier it becomes to stay disciplined because you are not constantly exposing yourself to temptation. Time is one of the most important factors in breaking impulse-driven behavior. The longer you go without contact, the more clarity you gain. The more distance you create, the more you begin to see the situation for what it truly was, rather than what your emotions wanted it to be. But every time you break no contact, you reset the clock. You delay your healing. You restart the process of detachment, making it harder to fully break free. Discipline is not about suppressing emotions. It is about controlling your actions in spite of them. It is about recognizing that just because you feel something does not mean you need to act on it. It is about proving to yourself that you are stronger than your impulses, that you are capable of choosing long-term peace over temporary comfort. It is about mastering your mind instead of letting your emotions dictate your decisions. Distance is not a punishment. It is not about depriving yourself or making someone else suffer. Distance is an opportunity to grow, to rebuild, and to become someone so powerful that the version of you who once begged for love is unrecognizable. When you go no contact, you are not just stepping away from another person. You are stepping toward yourself. You are entering a space where healing happens, where clarity replaces confusion, where your energy is no longer drained by someone who did not appreciate it. This is not just about time apart. This is about transformation. In the early stages of no contact, the silence can feel deafening. It can feel like something is missing, like a part of you has been ripped away. That's because for so long, your identity was tied to that relationship. You measured your days by their responses, your mood by their attention, your worth by their validation. And when all of that is gone, you are left standing in the emptiness, wondering who you are without them. But this is where real change begins. Distance forces you to face yourself. Without the distraction of their presence, you have no choice but to examine your own patterns, your own wounds, your own reasons for staying in a situation that was not serving you. You begin to see things clearly. The way you lowered your standards, the way you ignored your intuition, the way you fought for something that was never fighting for you. The truth that was once clouded by emotion becomes undeniable. Transformation happens in phases. At first, there is withdrawal. Your mind craves the comfort of familiarity, even if that familiarity was painful. You may feel restless, tempted to break no contact, convinced that maybe you were wrong. But if you resist the urge, something powerful begins to happen. You start to adapt. The emotional grip that person had on you weakens. The pain that once felt unbearable starts to fade. And in its place, a new version of you begins to emerge. One of the most significant changes that occurs through distance is the shift in perspective. When you are too close to a situation, you cannot see it clearly. You are caught in the moment, driven by feelings rather than facts. But with time and space, the reality of the relationship comes into focus. And you start to recognize the patterns, the red flags, the ways in which you were settling for less than you deserved. What once felt like love begins to look like control, like manipulation, like emotional dependency. And when you see things for what they truly were, going back is no longer an option. Distance also creates the space for self-discovery. When your energy is no longer consumed by someone else, you have the freedom to redirect it toward yourself. You start investing in your own growth, your passions, your goals, your well-being. You start reconnecting with the parts of yourself that were neglected in that relationship. The hobbies you abandoned, the dreams you put on hold, the self-love you sacrificed to make someone else happy, it all comes back. And the more you pour into yourself, the less you crave what you walked away from. Another powerful transformation that occurs through distance is the rebuilding of self-worth. Every day that you choose to stay away is a declaration of your value. It is a statement that says, I will not settle, I will not chase, I will not accept less than I deserve. And with every passing day, that statement becomes a belief. You start carrying yourself differently. You start expecting more, not just from relationships, but from life. And because of that, the kind of people you attract begins to change. When you operate from a place of lack, you attract relationships that reflect that lack. But when you operate from a place of wholeness, you attract relationships that reflect your strength. That is the power of transformation through distance. You are not just removing toxic connections, you are elevating your entire existence. There will come a moment in your journey when you look back and realize that the person you once longed for no longer holds power over you. The messages you once hoped for no longer matter. The closure you thought you needed no longer exists because you have created your own. And that moment is when you know you have truly transformed. This journey is not just about forgetting someone, it is about remembering yourself. It is about rising from the ashes of a relationship that tried to diminish you and stepping into the most powerful version of yourself. It is about becoming so strong, so fulfilled, so whole that the thought of returning to your old patterns is no longer an option. That is the true gift of distance. It does not just separate you from someone else, it brings you back to yourself.